Lucy Farnsworth had always found solace in the quiet hush of the Dandelion Dale Public Library. Since she was a child, the swirl of dust motes dancing in sunbeams, the faint rustle of pages turning, and the steady smell of old leather bindings had soothed her soul. Now, as a library clerk, she had the honor of preserving that gentle ambience, greeting patrons with a soft smile and shelving well-worn volumes back into their rightful places. It was a life of simple joys, as unassuming as the spines of the books resting on the library's sturdy oak shelves. Until one day, she came across something that unsettled that peaceful routine. On that particular Monday morning, Lucy was reorganizing the local history section. She recalled a new donation from a retired scholar, oversized volumes filled with photographs of early Dandelion Dale. She was in the midst of sliding one of these heavy tomes into place when she noticed a slim paperback lodged behind it. It looked quite old, a fading mystery novel. Curious, she thumbed through the pages. To her surprise, the margins were peppered with tiny, neat pencil markings. At first glance, they might have been scribbled notes or an attempt at deciphering a puzzle, but as Lucy read more carefully, she realized these jottings were coded references, dates, directions, and times that made no sense on their own. Intrigued, she set it aside on her desk to examine later. That afternoon, as the sun sank behind the rolling hills and the library's golden lamps flickered on, Lucy studied the scribbled notations more thoroughly. She noted 2 sets of instructions: times of day, mostly in the late evening, and locations around Dandelion Dale she recognized: Pearl Street, Farthing Lane, the old orchard near Elmwood Park. There were also abbreviations that appeared to be code words. One repeated combination stood out: AD12, etched in the margin near a mention of exchange. Another read GF7, Orchard Bench. She had no idea what any of it meant, but her curiosity was piqued. Over the next few days, Lucy kept her eyes open for more borrowed books with similar markings. Normally, the library prided itself on erasing pencil scribbles from its books, but these notations had been overlooked or perhaps hidden too subtly to catch the eye. Soon enough, Lucy found a second book, a historical romance novel on the adult fiction shelves, with identical cryptic jottings. Again, she saw references to times and places in Dandelion Dale, along with RA5, JD9 until delivery 2 a.m. Something clandestine was being arranged, Lucy suspected. She showed her findings to Mrs. Coppersmith, the head librarian, who regarded the scribbles with an amused smile. Probably a treasure hunt, Mrs. Coppersmith mused. People do the strangest things. But Lucy was not convinced. In her free time, Lucy started discreetly observing who was checking out these books. A pattern emerged. A small circle of individuals who never seemed to enter the library together, yet each borrowed titles containing these peculiar notes. Among them was a well-dressed man with a silver moustache who wore expensive shoes, an elderly woman who seldom met Lucy's gaze, and a fidgety teenage boy who darted around the shelves like he was looking for something but never asked for assistance, each left with at least one suspiciously annotated book. Lucy felt certain they weren't just reading for pleasure. One afternoon, after scanning the day's returned books, Lucy discovered another coded message tucked inside the pages of a battered volume. Cherry Blossom Tavern, 11 p.m., 15% tea. That evening, she decided to take a bold step. Though she'd never done anything sneaky before, the possibility of uncovering a secret in her serene hometown was too tempting. After closing the library, she hurried home, changed into dark jeans and a sensible jacket, and set off for the Cherry Blossom Tavern. Despite its quaint name, the Cherry Blossom Tavern was mostly known for its low-key, folksy atmosphere. Local farmers often congregated there for a pint at the end of the day, as did travelling salesmen taking a brief rest. Nothing seemed particularly suspicious. Lucy perched on a corner stool with a ginger ale, pretending to read a musty novel she'd borrowed from the library. 11 o'clock came and went. She was about to abandon her efforts when a tall figure in a hooded jacket entered, scanning the room. The newcomer was soon joined by two individuals, one of whom Lucy recognized as the silver-mustached man from the library. The trio nodded at one another, exchanged quick words, and slipped into a back hallway leading to the tavern's old storage area. Lucy's heart hammered as she waited a few moments before discreetly following. In the corridor she moved quietly, pressing her ear to a closed door. She could only catch fragments of muffled voices. Next shipment. Antique vase. Avoid detection. Thrills of suspicion chilled her arms. As she listened, a sudden presence made her whirl around. There stood the elderly woman who often borrowed the coded books. "Looking for the restroom, dear?" the woman asked in a quiet but firm tone. Lucy mumbled a hasty excuse and felt her cheeks burn. The woman's eyes flicked to Lucy's library name tag pinned neatly to her jacket. "You should be careful wandering off alone in small places," she warned, then strode back toward the tavern's main room. Lucy's pulse pounded as she hurried out, leaving behind her half-finished ginger ale. Sleep eluded Lucy that night. Her mind churned with the possibility of a black market for antiques operating under the town's unassuming surface. Where were these items coming from, and why all the codes in the library's books? The library was the perfect place for discreet communication. No one would suspect illicit messages scrawled in the margins of innocuous-seeming novels. The next morning, Lucy resolved to share what she'd found with someone she trusted. Daniel Watts, the local police officer. He was friendly and had always shown an interest in her book recommendations. Perhaps, she reasoned, he would take the cryptic notes seriously. During her lunch break, Lucy hurried to the station. Officer Watts listened attentively, studying each photocopied page of scribbled lines. "You might be onto something, Lucy," he said. "But we need real proof before we can officially act. Keep an eye on these people and let me know if you notice anything else." Investigations in Dandelion Dale usually involved lost pets or missing bicycles, nothing like trafficking antiques. Lucy left the station feeling both nervous and determined. She grew more vigilant over the following week, compiling a list of suspicious patrons, the books they borrowed, and any coded messages she uncovered. She noticed a pattern in their meeting places: the bike path under the old railroad bridge at midnight, a dusty nook of the Willowcrest Cemetery near an overgrown statue, or a secluded corner of the orchard. The cryptic references often mentioned porcelain, ivory, Ming, and Egypt. Lucy concluded they were trafficking stolen treasures and leaving instructions in the library's books to avoid detection. One evening, Lucy discreetly followed the silver-mustached man, whom library records identified as Henry Rathbone. This time, he carried a zoological volume that Lucy had found with fresh pencil notations. Under a dim lamppost, he slipped into a boarded-up storefront on Farthing Lane. Lucy crouched behind scraggly bushes and tried to see inside through a grimy window. Though she could only make out vague shapes, she observed several people examining a delicate vase. One tapped a ledger, and another nodded, as though they'd confirmed a transaction. Lucy's hands trembled as she snapped a covert photo with her phone. The next morning, a folded note appeared underneath the library's front door. It bore a faint scent of lavender and read, "Curiosity can be dangerous, Miss Farnsworth. Some secrets are not meant to be uncovered." Lucy felt an ice-cold knot in her stomach. She thought she'd been careful, but apparently someone had noticed her surveillance. Fear gave way to determination. She couldn't turn a blind eye to what was happening right under her nose. She showed the note to Officer Watts, who arranged for quiet police surveillance. He asked Lucy to go about her duties as though nothing had changed, not wishing to alert the smuggling ring that the authorities were onto them. Lucy returned to her daily tasks, shelving books, tidying reading nooks, and greeting patrons. Every time she saw Henry Rathbone or the elderly woman near the circulation desk, she forced herself not to glance at the volumes they borrowed. The tension knotted in her gut, but she had to play her part convincingly. A few more silent days passed, with no new coded markings cropping up in any returned books. Lucy began to worry that the group might have discovered the police's involvement and abandoned their operation. Then, while housekeeping in the cozy fireplace alcove, she found a slip of paper tucked beneath a seat cushion. Torn from a library book, it bore the distinctive library stamp and read, 10 p.m. Orchard Clearing, bring AD 12. Lucy recognized AD 12 from earlier scrawlings. She relayed the slip to Officer Watts, who organized a small team for a discreet stakeout that night. Darkness enveloped the old orchard as Lucy, Officer Watts, and 2 plainclothes officers took up positions behind gnarled trunks. Moonlight shimmered off the petals of late-blooming fruit blossoms. Lucy's heart thrummed in her ears. At precisely 10 p.m., a shadow parted the orchard's edge. Henry Rathbone, carrying a slender leather case under his arm. Moments later, the elderly woman and the hooded figure Lucy had spotted before emerged from different paths. They congregated around a wooden bench strewn with fallen blooms, speaking in low tones about Chinese jade and a buyer waiting. Lucy felt electric tension strum through her. Henry opened the leather case, revealing a breathtaking jade figurine whose surface gleamed an otherworldly green in the moonlight. The elderly woman handed him a small black pouch that looked like a money holder. The hooded figure shifted nervously, scanning the rows of trees. Officer Watts whispered into his radio, an unspoken cue that it was time to move once the transaction was confirmed. The moment Henry Rathbone accepted the pouch, officers sprang from the shadows, flashlights slicing the darkness. Lucy held her breath, bracing herself as Henry and the elderly woman froze in the bright beams. The hooded figure tore away into the orchard, with one of the police officers in pursuit. Lucy darted forward to snatch the jade figurine, heart clawing at her ribs. She managed to keep it from clattering to the ground. Police lights soon illuminated the orchard as backup arrived, and Lucy could finally exhale, relieved that at least 2 of the smugglers were apprehended. At the station, Henry Rathbone and his accomplice were questioned. It turned out they were part of a larger network, smuggling artifacts from overseas and selling them to collectors who cared little about the legal provenance. Leaving coded notes in library books had been their method of choice. Books passed through many hands and rarely raised suspicion. Lucy felt a mixture of satisfaction and disbelief. Who would have guessed her tranquil library duties would end up unmasking such a hidden web of crime? Within days, the Dandelion Dale newspaper ran a story on how a vigilant library clerk and local police had stopped an illicit antiques ring. Neighbors shook Lucy's hand, thanked her for her quick thinking, and marveled that something so sophisticated could unfold in their quiet town. Lucy was unaccustomed to attention, having spent most of her life in the soft hush of the library. Still, seeing the operation shut down made her proud to have played a role. With the suspects behind bars, library life soon resumed its normal rhythms. Lucy gave extra attention to newly returned books, dutifully erasing scribbles or notes, her mind drifting back to how a dusty paperback had sparked this entire ordeal. She occasionally felt lingering nerves, fearing that someone else in the network might come after her. Officer Watts assured her that authorities were pursuing leads in neighboring areas, with confidence that the ring had been effectively uprooted in Dandelion Dale. One afternoon, Mrs. Coppersmith, the head librarian, approached Lucy while she was reorganizing the foreign literature section. "You did well, my dear," she said warmly. "I know I was skeptical, but look at what your curiosity accomplished. Our town is safe." Lucy blushed, though she was quietly proud. She'd never imagined that simple scribbles in the margins of a book could uncover a hidden network of smugglers. "Just promise," Mrs. Coppersmith added with a wry smile, "that next time you stumble across cryptic clues, you'll alert the authorities immediately." "I don't think my nerves could manage another secret investigation." Lucy laughed gently, recalling the adrenaline that had coursed through her in the tavern's back hallway and among the orchard rows. Despite the relief of having the ring exposed, she occasionally glanced over her shoulder, uneasy that someone might be lying in wait. Weeks crept by, though, and her suspicions receded as she returned to preparing for children's story time and archiving local newspapers. When autumn arrived, the library staff redecorated the building with pumpkin cutouts and russet-coloured banners. Lucy settled back into her familiar role, offering reading suggestions, stamping return dates, and dusting neglected corners. She sometimes caught herself looking at the margins when flipping through donated volumes, as though expecting hidden clues. But the hush of Dandelion Dale's library remained soft and comforting, with no new conspiracies lurking under the surface. Before locking up one evening, Lucy stopped by the exhibit of local antiques and books in the library's entrance display. It showcased clay shards, vintage postcards, and a bright teal typewriter on loan from the Historical Society. She smiled in relief at these legitimate artifacts, preserved for the public and not destined for illegal sale. Stepping outside, she felt the crisp air swirl leaves at her feet, reminding her of the orchard's moonlit clearing. She could almost see the faint glow of that jade figurine and hear the soft hiss of police radios. As she strolled down the lamplit sidewalk toward home, Lucy reflected on how even the quietest town can harbor noisy secrets. Books could be doorways not only to faraway worlds, but to hidden realities right in one's backyard. The library had gone from being a serene haven to the stage of a clandestine drama that partially relied on her keen eye. She didn't aspire to become a detective, but she knew if ever another coded message appeared, if strange markings on tattered pages hinted at wrongdoing, she would be ready. For now, however, Lucy embraced the gentle calm of evenings in Dandelion Dale, grateful that the everyday hush had been restored. She hoped the library's future patrons would fill its checkout logs only with wholesome stories and light-hearted mysteries. Still, she carried the faint thrill of possibility whenever she cracked open a book. It reminded her that every volume has its secrets, and sometimes the lines scribbled in the margins tell tales more alive and more dangerous than anyone suspects.